Welcome to D3O, world leaders in impact armour. Today we're here to talk about motorcycle safety. Now we have a panel of guests and a studio audience, fine looking they may be. First of all, I think the best thing to do is for you guys to introduce yourselves. Let's start at the far end.
My name is Paul Varnsverry. I'm involved in assisting companies to meet their legal obligations to have motorcycle clothing tested and certified. I also am involved deeply and have been for many years in standards development.
My name is Richard Harfoot. I'm the head of Motorsport at D3O. I look after everything to do with motorcycle and automotive across the company.
My name is John Milbank. I'm a consumer editor at Bennetts Bike Social, and part of my role is communicating safety standards and trying to get consumers to understand what they mean and why they might matter to them.
I'm Tom Booth-Amos. I'm a motorcycle racer in World Supersport for Triumph factory racing.
So Paul, we'll start with you. What is the current state of motorcycle safety within the UK?
Well, looking at it from my perspective of clothing, I've long been an advocate of a recognisable mark of fitness for purpose, where consumers can differentiate between competing products in the marketplace and make an informed purchasing choice. And where we are at the moment is that since the new PPE regulation came in 2018, there is now far more product on the market where it's certified to one of several levels of performance, and this also extends to impact protectors. And consumers, if they research the topic, then they can make a far more detailed and considered choice in the kit they buy. So I would say there has been an improvement in the last number of years. We're seeing a lot of the cheap and nasty products disappearing from the market. They're still out there, but the legitimate traders and the legitimate brands, they're doing a great job.
Now Richard, obviously you're involved in motorcycle sport especially on the protection side. How important is it for the company to use that as a base?
It's everything, yeah. So we pride ourselves on making the highest quality armour out there, specifically motorcycle, and that's my focus. So for us, it's our bread and butter in terms of what we do. The quality and the ability to tune and create product that gives the rider an edge, a benefit, makes them more comfortable, makes them feel safe. That's the top priority. So it's vital that we're in control of that.
Now John, you're an experienced rider as well as your involvement in the safety side. It's how hard is it to communicate with the manufacturers to get the best results?
I'd say communicate with manufacturers is, in some cases, quite easy. It depends on the manufacturer. Some manufacturers are really open to the idea of us being able to explain safety standards. The biggest challenge comes in communicating it to riders. And it's very easy for some to mislead riders in the confusion that can come from the different standards. The way standards are carried out can be complex, but that should be a journalist's job to try and make it as simple for people as possible who want to understand it. But yeah, some brands can be quite confrontational when you start talking to them about, okay, you're going to push for higher levels of performance, higher levels of protection, whereas other brands can be quite open. It is encouraging to talk to some brands who are quite like, no, we want to see higher levels. We want people to have that option. It's never about telling people what to wear. It's about telling people what they can wear.
Now Tom, you're a racing man. You're a racing world championship, and obviously it's very important to keep you safe and keep you consistent, obviously, and racing. But how much input do you have into what you're wearing and what you use?
Yeah, I wear Fjorgen leathers and have been now for I think six years or so. So ever since I started working with them, every year they come up with something new with D3O and they give us something to test, and then we go back to Fjorgen and I explain what works well about it, what doesn't work. I remember in the beginning when I first started using the back protectors, I said something about it, and they'd come with the following year and they'd bring out a new one. So yeah, it's a big important thing because obviously we need to be able to move on the bike and the protection. So yeah, it's important to work with them.
Richard, how difficult or easy is it for the consumer to see what protection is in the garment they're using?
Good question. I think it's much better than it used to be. I think there is a way that you can, as a consumer, you go into any motorcycle store, it's there to be seen if you know where to look. So I think it could be better. I think some brands do a better job than others, but the things like this, like looking for terms and conditions. So there could be a slightly better highlight on how you could find out whether a jacket is an A, double A, triple A, or what level armour it has inside. Is it a type A coverage, type B coverage, whatever it might be. That all can be found out, but it might not be something that's right at the forefront of that sales story. It's not going to be next to the price. It's not going to be next to the aesthetics of the jacket. It's probably going to be, once you unzip it, look inside the labels and have a bit of a read. So not everyone's going to do that. Not everyone knows to do that. Not everyone really wants to do it. So there could be a way of improving it whereby it's a little more obvious. It's next to the price. It could be a little bit more accessible, because it can be a bit daunting. Again, if someone's not familiar with any of this, they don't know what the letters mean. They're not going to look into it. They just know it's in a motorbike shop, so it should be fine. So I think there's probably a little bit more that can be done, but it's promising.
Now, Paul, as time moves on, development moves on, how long do you give companies like obviously D3O time to develop and move on to new rules and regulations?
Well, I don't have any influence on that, and neither do standards as such. Companies will develop at their own pace, the pace that suits their clients, the materials they're working with, new technologies. What standards do, they provide a minimum set of requirements for the performance of those products, and they are reviewed periodically. The convention is 5 years, give or take, and that's to take account of changes in risk or changes in technology. So changes in technology will come from the innovators in any particular marketplace, be that impact protection, be it clothing, be it footwear or gloves. So standards will always lag slightly behind, and that's just the way things are, and perhaps the way things should be. Standards should not curtail or motivate innovation in themselves, but they should be responsive to it.
So where do you see the level of safety at the moment?
Well, I think that it can be increased, and we did have a standard in the past that was withdrawn a couple of years ago that did set a higher performance requirement. It had been around for 20 or so years. That's fallen into the background in favour of a new standard, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because the new standard has actually put a marker on the more mainstream clothing for the majority of riders. So it hasn't been a bad thing in that regard. But with a revision process due shortly in the clothing standard, I think it's an appropriate time to bring back in those high levels of performance, particularly for some of the road surfaces that we have here in the UK, which are more abrasive than some of the road surfaces in Europe, and also for track use, because the current standard as it is perhaps doesn't offer consumers the ability to differentiate quite so clearly between products in the same classification. I'm thinking specifically of AAA here, which can cover a multitude of different performances of garments.
John, what's your opinion on that? Obviously, you've been around a long time, as I have, riding on two wheels. Things have changed quite dramatically over the years. How do you see it now?
I do think things have improved. I think it's easier for people to make some informed choices, but I think there are still challenges. I think from what we're seeing, consumers are getting wiser to this, and they're asking more and more questions. And I think it's interesting what Richard said about labelling. For some sellers and brands, they might not want that labelling as clear. Not all brands want to sell on the protective performance, or that's not the forefront of what they're selling. Personally, I think if you're going to buy a motorcycle riding kit, surely protective performance is part of your decision-making process. Because if it's not, just buy whatever, buy outdoor walking kit. If you're going to take into account whether it's the impact protection, abrasion resistance, seam strength, tear strength, there are so many things that go into making a protective garment. It should be clearly communicated for people. And I think Paul's right as well. If there is the ability there to prove higher levels of protection, people should have the option to see it. And certainly in like leathers, AAA has been, the new standards, given A, AA, AAA in 17902 has been very helpful for a lot of people. It's allowing people to compare kit. But AAA has created this level that your leathers would way exceed the performance. I'd certainly hope they do. But when people are coming to buy stuff, they can't see that actually it can go way beyond. And I think we have that opportunity to offer people that choice if they want it.
You know, Tom, obviously in your world, you come from an off-road background through to road racing. Things have moved on pretty quickly, even in your time, with not just obviously impact armour within your suits, but obviously air suits and so on, which is compulsory at World Championship.
Yeah, oh, massive. I mean, when I left the UK to go racing in World Championship, immediately I had to get an airbag suit. And ever since then, in 2018, I wouldn't go back now to wearing a normal suit. I mean, I've had my fair amount of crashes over the years, and I would safely say without an airbag, yeah, I would have a lot bigger injuries. So to see the way that everything has moved on, even in 6 years or so, it's massive. And I think most riders would agree with me in saying that, I mean, thanks to everybody that's helping and making this kind of stuff, and airbags and D3O, it's helped save a lot of injuries.